spending some time. I'll do my best. Actually, as looking at the slides, they're a lot more salesy than I thought they would be, so I'll try to get through it, get you guys to catch up a little bit of time, and give Vincent some time to talk about his company, uConekt. It was a very good example of what our technology has been able to do. So for those of you who don't know NXP, and just go a little background on us, one of the interesting things, I think it was about 5 years ago, actually at this show, where I was actually on a panel where it talked about whether Bluetooth or NFC would be the new payment technology of choice. So we've come a long way. I think at the time it was maybe a total of 5 to 10 million phones had been shipped. We've now surpassed over 1 billion in that short amount of time. So it has come a very long way. Back to your question earlier about IoT, one of the things that we look at, all of these devices coming out, being connected, everything's got to be smart. There was a great comment also in the last panel made about the fact that these mobile devices actually provide lots of extra layers of security on top of just the chip-based technology that you can get. And really that all these things need to be secure. We had recent reports, and some of you have heard there's a car, I think it was a Jeep, which was hacked. There's another one which is, I think, even more terrifying, which was a baby monitor that got hacked. And a 42-year-old person was talking to a 2-year-old child because they had actually hacked in the Wi-Fi system. So the need to have these things secure is becoming increasingly more important. If you look at one of the things that NXP has done, we're really the backbone to most of the payment solutions that you see, whether it be around things like physical access, payment access, your passports. There's a high probability, especially now that EMV has taken off in the US, that you've got a chip of ours somewhere in your wallet today or in your mobile device that you've got. Also, we mentioned automotive is also a very large area that's becoming increasingly connected. You look at the content, the digital content in new autos today, even not just the Teslas, but all of the cars across the board, is increasing with everything, and these cars are connected. One of the things that we think is an opportunity is to really leverage some of the existing secure, if you look at secure payment technology, the platform, like I said, for transportation, for things like wearables, the ability to use those same platforms to secure other devices is something that we think is a real opportunity. It's a known way in terms of securing your chip card, securing your ID, your passport, and being able to sort of leverage that technology in newer devices coming out. As I mentioned, you're starting to see more and more, not just in the payment side, but looking at contactless as a whole. And again, if you look at what's in today's mobile devices, it's the same technology you're using to access buildings, that you're using to access transit systems, that you're using as you go through customs with your ID. And again, that's part of the key of what's enabling all of these different types of transactions. I just noticed even more and more you're seeing hotels that are contactless versus what you see as magstripe. And again, that same technology is what can go in these devices. One of the biggest challenges, and we tried to make that slide as complicated as possible, is that the payment, and it also touches what I heard in 2 of the panels on, we've made it incredibly difficult for consumers to understand or become educated about how it is that things are actually happening and working. And if you look at that, that's literally what it took. If I go back to that, what we thought was great when the Android devices started coming out with NFC, we put a secure element in the devices. We thought, hey, here's this, within 5 years, everybody's going to be doing it, everybody's going to be using it. And what we came to find is one of the biggest issues was the complexity. This is not a technology that was launched in mobile devices or any device similar to where it became something that an application could use. The analogy I would use, think of it if the camera had come this way, and the only way for Instagram to access it would be to go cut a business deal with 15 other companies in order for that to actually work. And to a certain extent, that's what we did with NFC and with the use of a secure element is that it became essentially locked down by device makers. It became something, and they would have to eventually go out and do it. In the case of a Samsung or an Apple, it's very probable that they can actually go do it. When you start to look at wearable devices, all the new devices that are coming out, it's just not a reality to be able to say, I'm not only going to take on selling the device and the key features, what I want to do, but I'm also going to have to manage this entire ecosystem. And again, so when you look at it, a lot of the mobile wallets that we put in place, like I said, we started to see a lot more traction, but where we saw the real, I would say, challenges that came is how do we get other applications on? How do I, as an application provider, have the ability to come into a device with, again, without having to go cut a deal with everybody across the board? And so what we started to look at was something we called loader service, and it essentially allows for that secure element to be managed so that I, as an application provider, can go, and in another analogy, I'll try to limit the amount of analogies I'll give, but think of it as your ability to, if it's an apartment building, you need access to get into that complex or that building in the first place, but then you just need your own individual apartment, and you don't want the person next door to be able to access yours. And in many ways, that's what loader service was. So the ability for you to put that applet, whether it's a MasterCard applet, it's a transit applet, it's a secure ID applet, to be able to put it onto that device. And that's where we came up with the concept of loader service, to essentially make it so that in any device where it has that chip inside of it to enable the different secure applications, it would allow basically an application provider to be able to come in. And I'm going to have Vincent give you some examples of what his company, uConekt, has done in the past. I'm going to go through this very quickly because Vincent's going to do a much better job. I just thought it was great graphics there with the little guy. But basically, again, what it allows you to do is to be able to simply load, and especially where we're seeing is on wearable devices, so I can load a credential securely, very much like you do loading credentials today on most of the mobile wallets that you see, and be able to load it securely and have the same secure functionality, if you will, that you've got, again, today in your bank cards, your passports, or in your mobile wallets. And just to give you some idea of the different markets and places to where we're looking at it, because we see this, we think initially you're going to see more, and where we've seen it is much more on the wearable side, but we believe it has applications across the board, whether it's an IoT device, automotive, or where we've seen in mobile. And in particular, it's going to be for devices where you don't have the critical mass like a Samsung or an Apple might have to be able to do it. Last one before I'm going to hand over to Vincent. Again, this just gives you some more ideas. I think I've touched on some of these. Is enabling the ability, like I said, is that high security or chip-based security. And again, it's not saying that's the only way to do it. It's not saying that it's best for every application, but it is proven as a secure system to be able to have both hardware and software-based security in your particular device. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Vincent Ramoutar, who's founder of uConekt, and give you an idea of how he's been able to take this and put it into their wearable. Thanks.
Thank you, Jeff. So, first question. How many of you in the audience has a wearable device and you're wearing it right now? Look at that. I have bad news for you. You now have to take those wearables off, and you need one that's powered by NXP. Best of Innovation Award for 2017 by CES. That's why we're in this room today. So let me just quickly, Vince Ramoutar, founder and CEO of uConekt. We provide security solutions to enable the authentication and the identification of your identity securely on proven hardware. So what does that really mean, proven hardware? Well, the solutions that are coming from NXP have already been evaluated, they have been benchmarked, and they have been proven to be industry standard, and the platform is secure. Because of that, you have the ability to become your own password. You heard in the previous panel, you are your password. And so how do we enable you are your own password? First off, on this bracelet, you have a fingerprint sensor. So you will enroll yourself, you will capture your fingerprint, and no, it's not stored in the smartphone. It is going to be stored in the secure element right here in this bracelet. And it's not going to leave this bracelet for no reason. Secondly, you have voice also. So we started with two biometric modalities, voice and fingerprint, because those are the two best ones right now, simple to adopt. We are moving towards other platforms. So you want to lock down your login, you now have your password, basically yourself, which is your fingerprint, to enable and access any services that you have that you're enrolled for. Why is the endpoint so important? Why is it that you have to lock down your login and making sure that your identity is never compromised? Well, basically, if it's stored somewhere, someone is going to be able to get access to it. When it's stored in a wearable device such as this one, it's stored in the secure element, it's encrypted, and it's never removed from this device. And you want to have your identity under your control so that you could decide whether you want to make a payment using your fingerprint or not, whether you want to access your Facebook account or not, whether you want to open your laptop or not. Those are the types of solutions, whether you want to make a payment or not. And the ability to do that using a wearable device extends the model of how you could work through frictionless transactions. And so ease of use and the ability to be able to take a device such as this to enable your everyday usage. So you walk up to Starbucks, you don't have to take out your Starbucks card. You don't have to do anything. You should be able to walk up to Starbucks, walk in, order your coffee, and leave. That's frictionless. You walk into a hotel, the Hyatt Hotel. You don't even need to talk to anybody. I know you really want to talk to the front desk, but you really don't need to talk to the front desk, because as soon as you walk in the door, you're identified, your room gets downloaded over the air, your key is automatically inserted into the secure element, you know your room number, you tap on the lock, and the door opens. Now, isn't that cool? Those are solutions that are being proof of concepts today. What is the value proposition in the business-to-business market? On the consumer side, there is value, but today consumers are not ready. In the business-to-business market, that's where we're positioned, and that's where our proof of concept. So the ability to enable payment as one of the first use cases is very straightforward. We're doing it today with the tap and go, with the PIN code into inserting your chip cards. These are all available today. And secondly, access control to be able to take your identity to access your applications and services that you have. So this device right now, one of these devices is in the Innovation Showcase in the Sands Hall, Sands Expo, sorry, Innovation. So you can go and take a look at it. uConekt, I'm going to plug uConekt right now because I have to. We're at the Eureka Park in one of the booths there, 51060, so you can come by and see me. And I look forward to opening the floor and passing it back to Jeff.
Yeah, that was basically, like I said, I think the main thing we want to get across is starting to look at, one is how do we make it usable, and in terms of using a secure element in a particular device. And again, I'm not saying it's the end all. We believe it's the best, obviously, in terms of the most secure. But how do we really make it accessible and easy to use? And I think Vincent's company is a great example of that. It's very similar to what you see today in terms of level of security that you might find in your Apple Watch, in your Samsung device. It's just in those cases, there's a lot more infrastructure they're able to actually put in place to go do that. But fundamentally or technically, there's nothing preventing us from putting a government ID, from putting your hotel key, your payment card, your physical access to the building. It's just the facilitation, if you will, of how we do that. So with that, Karen?
So I think that's fascinating. I really do. And I can see a lot of the really clever and creative use cases. But I think my job is to be the ant at the picnic for all of these things. Because wearables haven't set the world on fire. They haven't. And for women in particular, they haven't set the world on fire, because women like wearables that are blingy. You know, if I'm going to do a wearable, I'm going to have a really nice watch and a bracelet, and I don't have room on my wrist to wear a wearable. So is this just the early use cases to prove the point. That's number one. And number two, what other things have to happen for this to really scale? Because the wearable is only as good as the other device that can read that signal from the wearable. So is this a lot of change that the ecosystem has to adopt for this to get momentum and scale?
Yeah, I think you touched on some really important parts. So one, I think if you look at wearables, to your point, I don't think there's going to be the killer wearable that's going to be the end all. If you look at, I think a lot of the wearable success has been around the fitness side of it. It's very, it works. It gives me my heart rate. I can play music. I can do a lot of cool things. I can now in the Apple Watch 2 actually not have to have my phone with me. So I think you are going to find that there are different devices that are going to be best for you, best for me, whether it's a mobile device, it could be a corporate wearable. I think there's different devices that are going to be working. I think what's leads to your second question is the key is that it still uses the same fundamental technology. So whether it be contactless or NFC, use of a secure element in any one of those devices to be able to do that. There's nothing preventing your mobile device from doing that, your wearable device from doing that. And maybe to try and answer your last one, the toughest part, I think, in some ways, we touch on a lot, is just consumer education. So I think when we recently did a study on mobile payments, and the question was around, what's the biggest reason you're not using that device? And for those that are not using it, their biggest fear was security. And then you ask the people who were using it and actually understood what was going on, they said, what's one of the biggest features you like? It's security. And so I think it's just a great example of that the education around these things is really lacking. We mentioned that I think there's not a single person here who's checked in. CES is basically about standing in lines in everywhere you go. I don't think there's anybody that is against the idea of saying, can I eliminate a line? Could I have simply come here and not had to find out where my badge was and go through? And it's really cool that it has NFC in here, but I had to go through kind of a crazy process to go get it. Could have easily been downloaded to my phone and do that. So that part of it, I don't think it's a technology issue. It's much more around education, and I think in some places you've got to overpower it. To make it happen, because like I said, that consumer's not going to know about it, so how are they going to ask for it?
Right. I also think it has to solve a problem. So, the Starbucks example, I think, one of the things that we've observed with Starbucks mobile order ahead is how, in a year, it's taken so much of share of, 1 out of every 3 mobile app uses now is for mobile order ahead, and that's just a year after its introduction, because it really solves a problem, and it has nothing to do with waiting in line and tapping something, even though that's an efficient experience at the point of sale. It avoids that whole thing altogether. So, I think we need to think about both consumer education and also what is going to transform that experience in a very different way. So, if the hotel already has NFC doors and I don't have to do anything but get something to a device or my phone, that's different than having to check in and then check in again, because I'm still having to check in. That's friction that you haven't eliminated.
Yeah, and so to that point, the ability of enabling the entire infrastructure, and if they already have NFC enabled, so that all the locks are already built in, the kiosks are there at the lobby when you walk in the door. So over-the-air transmission into one of these devices is a natural extension of the frictionless transaction and being able to put all of that. But coming back to that one question you asked about the bling bling for the ladies, well, I have 2 daughters, and they were very instrumental in the first design. I'm going to build some bling bling for the ladies because I understand that's an underserved market in the technology sector. That's why this one won the award, because if you look at it, it's really cool. Gold-plated, rose gold, you name it. And that's an underserved market today.
Yeah, I think it's always fun to see, around Christmas everyone gets their wearable, and then 2 weeks later no one's wearing their wearable in the gym anymore because they're tired of it. Any questions before we let these guys go? Any hands out there? Yes.
Via text message, surprisingly, I still give my credit card number over the phone a ridiculous amount of times a year. dealing with small businesses, local, stuff like that. Have you guys looked into solving that kind of problem? Because obviously that's not super secure when I'm on the go.
Help me understand the text message.
Well, I'm just
You mean like a
thinking out of the
receipt
bikes,
or-
like somehow, if you're on the phone with a call center and then they were able to send your phone, hey, we want to charge you this much, while you're talking to them, you just say, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
And you've got your thumbprint or something versus having to sit there and go, my number is,
No, totally with you. And so the easy answer is absolutely. So if you look at even, and let's use Apple Pay as an example, Apple Pay, one of the bigger innovations about it isn't just so much the physical paying in the store, but it's the online purchases, right? So you're getting that same security when you use Apple Pay for your Uber account. You don't have to give Uber any of your information to be able to do that. So being able to identify, just like when you call customer service, I've got that particular phone, if that company or that entity, that bank has been authorized to be able to do it, there's no reason you can't at that same level of encryption talking to that device, and that particular identifier, if you will, in this case could be a MasterCard number. So one of the challenges, I think, and that's why from NXP, we can give you the platform, but it's really going to be, and this is where some of the complexity goes, is that it's one thing for MasterCard to say that they've got your identity on the phone, but they also have to work with that particular phone maker. Do you want to give access? I mean, and so you have to put the different pieces together, but technically, yeah. Even something as simple as receipts becomes a real challenge because that data, that information, which again, back to the privacy side, you want to protect, but a great convenience would be give me an itemized receipt and I can actually get that. Problem is the payment networks don't have access to that information. So technically those things are there, but I think more often than not, it's the business side that's causing the challenge to do it. But over to what Karen said, we've got to develop those kinds of things because when that happens the first time and that 20-minute customer service call takes about 30 seconds, you're going to see a massive benefit as a consumer and say, okay, I'm going to start to demand that. But like I said, today they don't even know to ask for it. So.
All right, Jeff, Vincent,
Yep.
thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.